Amy.
Hi, Mary. How you holding up?
Let's just say this. My birthday was on November 4th, and I am so glad I got to have a good birthday. That's the thing about having
one clear day before.
Yeah, because in 2020, my birthday was the day after the election. You'll remember.
Oh, no.
And this year, if it had been flipped, that would have been like the absolute worst.
Oh, God. Awful.
So,
happy belated birthday. I'm sorry. I don't know how I managed to forget to text you, but
I think you did. I don't know. It doesn't. It's all a blur. It's all a blur.
Oh, God. Well,
I bet you're glad to be in Costa Rica.
Yeah, it is definitely nice to have some physical and psychological distance from the U.S. Although it's also now kind of like provided this whole additional layer of stuff that I have to think about where I'm like, yeah, does this mean that I'm never going back to the U.S., which isn't necessarily the decision I thought I was making when I left?
Mm-hmm. Like, is it going to be possible to come back?
Is it going to be possible? Yeah, like what? I don't know. So anyway, that's cool. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So where should we start? Let's start with the night of. So what was the moment when you realized like, shit has gone off the rails?
You know, I have to say that I assumed that Kamala wouldn't win.
Oh, wow. The whole time?
Yeah. Like I months ago was like, Trump's going to get reelected. And I didn't say it out loud to that many people because I didn't want to freak people out. But I just didn't think there was any way. Like, I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like the fact that Biden had a pretty unpopular presidency, that we were still embroiled in this mess in Gaza and funding Israel to continue, dropping bombs on civilians in Gaza was bad. And that, the fact that Kamala didn't seem to be, indicating any kind of shift in course on that at all. Like I remember having conversations with young climate people a year or two ago, people who had been like super active in Sunrise and had like campaigned for Biden, even though they weren't a big fan of his.
That was a hard thing for people to do in 2020. I think people forget that.
It was really hard. People didn't want to do it, but they did it anyway because they kept getting told by the Democrats, like first it was, we need to get the House. And that was really like largely due to Sunrise organizing, at least in some part, not just Sunrise, but a lot of like climate organizing in general helped deliver the House. Then they got the House in it and they said, oh, but we actually need the whole government. We need the White House and the Senate too, right? So they fucking pulled up their big kid pants and went out and did it, even though they were not super charged up to campaign for an old white guy who had put Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court. They did it.
I don't think they were thinking that was long before their time. I think they were more thinking of like, he's an old white man and he's like kind of a moderate. Like there were way more exciting climate candidates on the field in 2020. Yes. And I think a lot of people forget that like Joe Biden was a laughingstock in that campaign until all of a sudden the Democratic establishment decided that they were going to coronate him and coordinate everybody else dropping out.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's exactly right. So, they could have had a big tantrum about it and stayed home. They did not.
And they would have been blamed.
That's right. They would have been. They got out the vote for Biden. They delivered the White House to him by the skin of his teeth. Mm-hmm. And then 2 years later, when I talked to most of them, they felt completely let down by the Biden administration. And I know that there are lots of people who will say, the IRA was the biggest climate policy ever passed in the U.S., blah, blah, blah. That's true.
That's a low bar, baby.
It's a low bar. It is doing some good things. I don't want to shit on the IRA and be like, it's all crap. Like, it's doing some good things. However, a lot of political compromises were made to get that thing passed. And the result is that while, yes, renewable energy is increasing in the U.S., So is oil and gas drilling, and so are emissions. Emissions have continued to go up in the Biden administration. They're higher in the Biden administration than they were in the Trump administration, as is oil and gas production from the US.
Right.
So if climate is your issue, I'm sorry, but what you look at is emissions and oil and gas production. And those things have not been impacted by the so-called climate president. So that was a huge letdown. A lot of those people were saying a couple years ago that they couldn't see themselves voting for Biden again. Then, when Harris was the nominee, Sunrise paused for a moment just to say they were going to wait and see a little bit and maybe try to use some of their leverage before endorsing, because they really wanted to see a different approach on Gaza. And I mean, the entire, climate universe totally went after them.
Oh, they did?
David Roberts and Matt Iglesias and all these people.
Is Matt Iglesias the climate universe, or is he just
not anymore? Not anymore. But Dave Roberts too, it was these fucking Sunrise kids need to grow up and understand how politics works and blah 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 blah. It's oh yeah, what an amazing get out the vote strategy. Those people are definitely going to want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so yeah, I did not have much hope of her winning, and so was sort of avoiding even watching election coverage, and then saw it going exactly the way I thought it would go. So
yeah. I am crazy, so I normally expect the worst, and this time I didn't. This time I actually had a gut feeling that she was going to win. And I thought that because one, I'm looking at the polls, they're really close. And I'm also looking at the way that people are coming up with this polling data, which is basically skewing it hard in Trump's favor. And I was like, okay, you skew it that hard, you're probably going to miss some of her support. And then also I was noticing that people on the far right were abandoning Trump. And it looked like the vibes were off on his side. People were leaving his rallies early. His rallies weren't really filling up. And when Richard Spencer, the Nazi who organized the Charlottesville rally, is endorsing Kamala, I was like, oh, I think he might be done. And so, but then, I wasn't nervous until I sat down to watch the returns. And then Florida became, Florida went red. And I was like, I feel like that's a sign. I know Florida's been red in a whole lot of elections that haven't gone, the Republicans' way, but still that it just didn't feel right. And so it was late at night and I still had friends texting no, it's really early. She could still pull it off and blah, blah, blah. We're not going to know the results for days and days and days. And I was like, nah, I think this is over. I think this is over. And so for me, I think there's so many different things that we can look at to explain why this happened the way that it did. I don't know necessarily how useful it is to do that sort of looking back, but it does feel good. Yeah. So let's do it.
Yeah. Well, I will say too that I am seeing just a really troubling amount of terrible takes on, sort of the lessons to be taken from this.
Where are you seeing them? Because we both deleted Twitter.
Oh yeah. We should have a moment of silence for our
Twitter. RIP. Yeah. So, and I would just like to point out one of our glorious moments on Twitter was when we spoofed BP. When we spoofed BP and got we bought a blue check for the BP account and pretended.
Yeah.
What did we say? Just because we killed the planet doesn't mean we can't miss it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a glorious moment for us. But yeah, we both. When I realized he had won one, I was like, I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to do. Yeah. So I did the only thing I could think of, which was nuke my Twitter feed. So if you're looking for me, I'm on Threads and I'm on Blue Sky, but I am not on Twitter. What about you, Amy?
Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky. and I'm on Instagram.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't post that much on there. I do have TikTok too, and I do post on there sometimes.
Yeah. I have Instagram too.
Good at it.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. But yeah, I did too. I was like, I tried to like download an archive of my stuff before I left. And then like 3 days later, I still haven't gotten the notification that it was like ready for download. And I was like, whatever, fuck it, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, which is painful because you and I both have, books coming out soon and things like that. So like, it sucks to lose.
I gotta tell you though, Twitter really didn't do much for my book. Twitter is not where you go for, like, that's not where book readers are necessarily. They're on Instagram.
No, that's true.
So
that's true.
It's better for promoting an article.
Yeah. Well, even with an article though, like there's a ton of data on the fact that like people will engage over and over again with a tweet, but not actually click the link read the article. So like, I don't know.
But you can't circulate it at all on Instagram. It's like the only one where you can really circulate an article.
That's true. I feel like Blue Sky is probably the closest to the way Twitter was. In the pre-Elon days.
I just joined it this morning. So
we have to connect on there.
Yeah, I follow you.
I think you do?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Hold on.
But I literally just joined like 30 minutes before we got on this call. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yay. I like it. I actually feel like that's the one that I probably use the most in the same way that I used to use Twitter.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the
bad takes.
The bad takes. Yeah. So I was seeing them on Twitter initially because I didn't immediately nuke my account. And then I was seeing them like in various listservs and on LinkedIn, which I use sometimes because it is actually a place that people read articles. So I am unfortunately trapped posting things there as well.
Oh.
And yeah, like I saw a lot of people kind of being like, I don't know, taking it as like, oh, see, like we went too far with trying to, talk about too many different progressive issues and we need to just focus on the economy. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's like, it's been whittled and whittled and whittled to, this place where like, you can't, like, I don't know. I'm like, I feel like all she talked about was saving abortion rights and economic issues.
Liz Cheney.
I know. I'm like, she was campaigning with the friggin' Cheneys, for crying out loud.
Right.
Like, the problem was not that she was too progressive. How the fuck are you guys making this?
As I was watching her run, I was like, okay, well, if she loses, they can't blame the left at all because guess who she did not listen to?
Oh, no, they are. Yeah, they found a way.
They're still working on it. And it's like, I remember when she first launched her campaign and there was all this like goodwill toward her because kind of looked like a new generation, kind of, she had expressed way more empathy for the Palestinian people than Biden had.
Right.
And we remember what her campaign was like in 2020. Like she was actually quite progressive. And so there was so much goodwill holding out. And at first it seemed like she was giving the base what they wanted up until she picked Tim Walz, which again, that was something the base wanted. And then she starts getting all these old Obama advisors, all these old Clinton advisors, and they're telling her to track to the right. And she tracked to the right hard as fuck. She's all about like, I got a gun. Don't be breaking in my house. Like I'm going to have a Republican in the cabinet. We're going to have the most lethal fighting force in the country. I'm going to always make sure Israel has all the bombs its heart desires. The Palestinians are people too, but they're going to get these bombs. You know what I mean? And the whole time, it was just like, I don't see how the left can be blamed for this. She didn't say anything about defunding no police. She didn't say anything about like abolishing rent or anything like that.
She came out as being pro fracking.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And I'm sitting there the whole time like, I hope you people know something that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. I mean, I wrote about this in the drill newsletter, but like I was kind of like this whole to me, and I'm not a political strategist, and I actually just want to like put a plug in here for like, please may this be the end of everyone thinking they're a fucking political strategist.
Lord.
Because, like, it is so annoying and we're not, okay? But when I looked at it, I was just like, there's nothing to me as a voter. Okay, as an American voter, there is absolutely nothing compelling about a candidate who is so visibly willing to completely reverse their position on any given subject.
Yeah, just to be president.
Because some pollster has told them that it'll get them elected.
Mm-hmm.
That is the thing that like people hate the most about politicians.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So like, to me, I look at this election and I'm like, okay, can we try like doing it the progressive way now? Because you don't fight the hard right with the fucking soft middle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. So looking at, obviously there's so many reasons why she lost. Who is your suspect number one? Or culprit number one, rather. We're not suspecting
Culprit
shit.
number one. I mean, I think that I think it's like I saw someone say this. I don't remember on which social platform now.
They all bleed together.
I saw someone say that like we should be talking as much or more about why he won versus like why she lost, which I do agree with. That like I think that actually I've been really interested to see a pretty like hefty batch of like election conspiracy theorists emerging already, being like, we need ballot curing. Like even Rachel Maddow was like, Donald Trump was saying like over and over again before the election, don't worry about voting. We have the votes we need. Don't worry about it. Blah, blah, blah. She did a whole segment on that. Then there have been all of these people on TikTok, especially being like, the difference between like the number of people who just voted for president and left the rest blank is like unusually large. And that there is this huge discrepancy in a bunch of battleground states where like the Senate and House went Democrat, but the president went Republican, which is also highly unusual, like all these things, right? And look, I mean, would I put it past Donald Trump to rig an election? Absolutely not.
No.
It's totally something he would do.
Yeah, it's up his alley.
It's definitely in his wheelhouse. But I just was surprised. I'm like, wow, like after all of the kind of, trust the election, blah, blah, blah stuff last time, I'm kind of surprised to see so many Democrats do that. And a friend of mine was like, oh, people gonna people, But anyway, I do think that, potentially sketchy election results aside, there was a massive swing to the right across the board in this election. And like, to me, I'm like, I think that like, it's not just that, yes, there is a significant number of Americans who really like being given permission to be sexist and racist. I think that's absolutely true. I also think it's true that the Democrats have completely lost their moral clarity. There is like, they are not giving people something to hang on to. And I think that Gaza is a big part of that.
Yep.
And I think that climate is a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the total failure to stand up for trans rights is a big part of that.
And immigrants. I was shocked by that.
Like, how many sacrificial lambs are we going to accept here, guys? This is ridiculous. What do you stand for?
I was so shocked when I was watching the convention and it was all like, fuck them immigrants. And I was like, wait, when did this become okay?
Also, immigration peaked years ago. Like, this is the other thing that I find really like concerning about a lot of this stuff is that it's totally just like a politics of fear that has no basis in actual data or reality at all. You know,
they're like, oh, I know how to be the Republican Party. Let's be the Republican Party. No, now
even with the inflation stuff. Inflation has ended. What's happening with prices now is corporate greed, full stop. There is a literal SEC investigation going on of multiple fossil fuel executives for rigging oil prices with OPEC.
Yeah.
Why were none of these people talking about
that? You want to know why?
Why?
They said that when she first came out, she was talking about going after corporate greed and, using her prosecutor shtick for that. But then her brother-in-law, I believe it was, who's like a CEO of Uber or Lyft or one of them shits out in San Francisco, told her to go easier on it. And she did. And so this is how we wound up here. But I'll tell you
barf.
I know.
Barf.
I know. I'll tell you who I hold the most responsible for all of this. Joe Biden. And for two main reasons. One, Gaza never should have become a campaign issue. He could have wrapped that shit up in October of 2023. Mm-hmm. It never should have made it here. All these people who died over this past year, this spreading of the war out to Lebanon, out to other countries, potentially into Iran, that is on Joe Biden's head. There is no reason that this should still be going on today. So that's number one. And number two, he told us he was only going to be a one-term president. So he should have been using that year that he got, or that first term that he got into the office to fix what he could fix and elevate new talent. We shouldn't have gotten to the point where it was like, we're about to go into another campaign season. And it's like, I know you had these conversations. I had several of these conversations where it was like, he shouldn't be the nominee. And everybody's like, well, who else is going to run? Who else has the name recognition? Why is that the problem? Yep. Why are we in that position? We're in that position because this party stifles this younger talent. And it's a gerontocracy. And I remember when we went on, I don't remember his name, but we went on another podcast when we were on Crooked Media, their furthest left podcast. And we were making the argument that Joe Biden shouldn't be the nominee. And people thought I was joking at the time because I was saying he's too old. It's not a joke. Getting older changes you. It really does. And the whole fate of the damn planet should not be just like hoping that you have an unusually long lifespan, an unusually long steady head during your lifespan.
Well, and they stifle their young talent, and they also completely stifle the progressive wing of the party with this total fear that like it's going to be too radical for people or whatever. When in reality, it's like, look, the last time you had people really psyched about a Democratic candidate was Bernie fucking Sanders, who like declares himself a socialist.
Yeah. And isn't actually a Democrat. There's also like AOC or Elizabeth Warren, people who have convictions and aren't afraid to say what they are. So,
who poll really well, who campaign really well. I had this brief moment where I thought a silver lining of this election could be that the Democrats would be like, well, maybe we need to give the progressives a shot, but it doesn't appear to be the way they're going.
It doesn't. So number one, I hold Joe Biden most responsible. And I think the narrative that is bugging me the most is that this is the fault of Gaza protesters or pro-Palestine protesters, or basically anti-genocide protesters.
Yeah,
because
that's right.
Bro, what are you supposed to do when you see a genocide? Just shut the fuck up?
Well, yeah. Like, I feel like, okay, look, like I understand, like people are mad about Jill Stein voters or undecided voters or people who left the top of the ticket blank or things like that, right? But like the vast majority of those people were voting their conscience, right? And like, I don't know, I just feel like it's fucking weird to scold people for that.
However, that's neither here nor there, because if everybody who voted Jill Stein had voted Harris, she still would have fucking lost. What this looks like to me is like a lot of people didn't vote. And granted, I don't know where the numbers are right now. But this is the first time I have seen a Republican win the popular vote. But this is the second time in my voting career that I've seen a Republican win the popular vote for president. The other time was George W. Bush. It was my very first election. I barely even remember it because it was such a long time ago. That was in 2004. And yeah, this is she lost. She got her ass beat. This wasn't close. Like it was a bloodbath. And so you got to kind of sit with that. And like, maybe the problem wasn't the genocide protesters. Maybe the problem was the genocide.
Yeah. You think? I mean, Jesus, I'm just like, come on.
Think about it for a second.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember getting, well, I don't know. I remember seeing a lot of climate folks on Twitter being like, it's really, really important to like, back, I think it was still Biden at the time for the election. This was like
back
in
the
response.
Blue. They might as well just say back the blue.
Exactly. So this was like in response to Sunrise being like, we're withholding our endorsement until like, because we would like to see some movement on Gaza. Right. And like people just flip the fuck out and we're like, you have to, make sure that you commit to Biden. And this was like pretty mainstream people. This was like Jade Begay, Leah Stokes, like lots and lots of people who were like, it's important to like speak out in favor of Biden right now. And it in some cases was like the day that, a massive bombing of a children's hospital happened. It was like really just, I don't know. And like, I remember thinking then, and I haven't really shifted that thinking that like, had all of that effort been put into getting Joe Biden and his administration to stop funding genocide in Gaza, we might be in a very different place.
Exactly. And, one of the last things I saw before I nuked my Twitter was someone commenting on one of my posts that if Trump won, the only person I could blame was myself.
Oh boy.
Which, like, first of all, thank you so much for thinking I'm so influential, but I can't even get my cat to come when I call his name. So this was absolutely not my fault. But it was difficult to like full-throatedly endorse. I wanted to. I remember watching the DNC and like wanting to be so excited, but like I'm watching the DNC on my TV and I'm scrolling Instagram on my phone and I can see the inside of a Palestinian child's head. I can't get excited now. And you can't even let a Palestinian speak. You know what I mean? Like I will say I didn't have a hard time casting my vote for her because Donald Trump really is that scary to me and full on fascism really is that scary to me. And I know what that means. Like Donald Trump, when he says he's going to end the genocide, means that he is going to complete it. When he says he's going to have clean air and clean water, he means he is going to privatize it. I understand what this means on a grand scale. So it wasn't hard for me to vote for her, but it was very hard for me to like advocate for her. And so at the beginning, when she gets the nomination, I think a lot of other people was trying to push her to be stronger on Israel and on the genocide. And then when it was clear she wouldn't do it, I didn't want to say a whole lot that would necessarily hurt her. So I focused on criticizing Trump. And then in the end, I did feel like I needed to be honest and say who I was going to vote for. And I don't believe in not voting. Like, I'm sorry. I am the children of people. I'm the part of the first generation of my family that was born with the right to vote. I take that seriously. So
yeah,
but I do understand, especially if you have lost family members in Palestine and in other countries because of this. I am not looking at you no kind of sideways. I am looking at this ticket sideways for not earning your vote because.
I mean, that's what lost Michigan. 100% full stop.
Exactly.
Like,
if I lose.
That was Gaza.
If I lose one aunt from a bomb, it's a wrap for me for the rest of my life, for the rest of my fucking life. one aunt.
Yeah.
These people are losing their entire families erased off the registry.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, you got to suck it up because Trump is worse. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. There was actually like a pretty good This American Life episode following the guy who started the undecided stuff.
Uncommitted.
Yeah, uncommitted, sorry. In his push to get them to like have a Palestinian speaker at the DNC.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's this one scene where he's talking to, because he was like, I don't want people to not vote ultimately. You know, like I do think, you know, he was really grappling with this whole like, what do we do if they don't let us have, how long, like how far do we take the uncommitted movement? And then, you know, he had a friend who is Palestinian and a Democrat who was like, you know, you got to get your people to realize that they still need to vote now and that they can't let Trump win and, you know, all of this stuff. And so at one point he's like talking to his dad, who's Lebanese, you know, and is like, yeah, I don't know if I can do it.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I was going to have a hard time voting for Joe Biden a second time. Like it was going to be hard. It was hard in 2020. And I honestly did not know if I could bring myself to do it.
I think a lot of people felt that way. And I don't think a lot of people saw Kamala as being any different.
And then there's also all of this like blame going toward Black men and Latino men. And I'm curious, what do you think of that?
Well, I think that there was like a good, I think it was on Al Jazeera, maybe, or maybe what's the new Mehdi Hassan?
Zateo,
maybe on there, where Ta-Nehisi Coates was talking about Obama like lecturing Black men.
And you know what's fucked up about that is that Obama actually was not raised in a Black family.
Yeah.
So when he says shit like man, and Pookie, and also what you understand when you grow up in a Black family is you don't criticize Black people in front of white people. What the fuck? That lets us know that you ain't family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially like using terms like that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, the argument that Ta-Nehisi Coates was making was kind of similar to that, but also was like, in what you do, like, I can't think of another group of people that the Democrats would think that speaking to them that way is how you get them to vote for you. Like, they certainly don't speak to white racists that way. You know what I mean? I think there was that. And I think with the Latino stuff, I feel like it's very easy to explain. And I feel like, again, this is like what happens when you don't have anyone from that demographic in any kind of like leadership in the DNC. You know, it's like, well, you know, there's two things going on. One is like a lot of Latin American countries have historically swung for strong men over and over and over again in the past. So like that political figure is sort of like familiar and compelling to a lot of Latino voters. The second is that like there is, you know, a fair bit of misogyny in Latino culture that needs to be kind of addressed and navigated. The third is like it's like the same as the temporarily embarrassed millionaire in the white working class. There's a lot of Latino voters who are first generation immigrants who see themselves as Americans and look behind them at like the quote unquote migrants as being less than. It's like the same reason that racism works to get people to turn on each other within a class, you know, like it's like, come on, how many different ways do we need to see this before we recognize that pattern? It's very clear what's happening there. And like, I don't know, it's sort of like if you're being targeted, right, you can either be like, oh shit, we all need to work together to fight this. Or you can be like, oh no, not me though, just those guys. You know, same as like a lot of white women, right? It's like they're voting for the patriarchy. They're voting for white supremacy because they think that's going to protect them.
Exactly.
It's the same old shit. Yeah.
Divide and conquer is a hell of a strategy, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and yeah, here we are. So you were saying on one of these social media apps that you've been looking at the donors to Project 2025.
Yes.
Tell me more.
As I said, I kind of suspected that this would go this way months ago. So I channeled that feeling and anxiety around it into doing a big spreadsheet of all of the organizations involved in Project 2025 and their staff and their connections to other networks and their top donors and who else those people fund, just to get like a good kind of sense of this whole ecosystem. And it was it's very interesting and very scary. And I'm kind of, I don't know. I also, even if like, I think that in some ways I feel like there's been too much of an obsession with Project 2025. It's like, look, none of these ideas are new. These have been around for a long time.
Even getting rid of NOAA?
Yeah. I mean, the right has like certain people on the right, and especially folks affiliated with the Heritage Foundation and the Kochs and like that whole universe, have been wanting to get rid of the EPA since it was started. So like, that's not like a new thing. And Heritage itself has done, I mean, this like mandate for leadership thing has happened with every Republican presidency since Reagan. So like, they've been doing this. A lot of these people who wrote Project 2025, it's like way more than half of the authors of it were previous Trump administration officials. Some of them have already been floated as, members of his next cabinet. So like, it's definitely coming from the same universe. However, I would like caution people against assuming that like that is Trump's whole policy plan until it actually becomes so. It's like let's like pick our battles here. We have to kind of like see what's going to happen. And like all of a sudden, I don't know if you followed this, but all of a sudden Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is like all up in the Trump camp now too. Like he's at Mar-a-Lago like advising on cabinet picks and shit. And then the two of them started some like site for people to like crowdsource ideas for Trump's cabinet. It's very odd.
Yeah.
So like, who the fuck knows where this is going? But I do think that like there is a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars of money being thrown at these organizations whose entire focus and reason for existing is to pull the US farther and farther to the right into a like not just a kleptocracy, not just a theocracy, but a very weird combo of the two. And I don't think that the Democrats have like fully grasped that. The other thing that jumped out to me actually is that a lot of these organizations have spent the last, at least 10 years, some of them up to 30 years, on one issue, and that is criminalizing abortion. About 20% of the Project 2025 organizations are just full anti-abortion organizations. That's all they've ever done. And guess what? They've won now. And so you have this situation of this giant apparatus, very well funded, that like isn't just going to dismantle itself. When like nonprofits get into the habit of bringing in tens of millions of dollars a year, they don't just go, oh, we won. Okay, time to go home. No, they are casting about looking for another issue. And they found it in trans rights. But I don't think that that's going to last because no one is standing up for trans rights. No. It's not enough of a fight.
No.
So like if climate people don't wake up to the fact that they could very well be next, it's going to be a big problem. Like this whole apparatus that's just like looking for its next thing. And there already has been a long-standing push to try to get religious people to be anti-climate action.
I mean, it's not hard, honestly, because who wants to sit around and think about climate change? And I'll say this, good luck to the climate movement, which I am no longer part of. Because honestly, now that the country has gone full fascist, I don't know if I'm gonna make it to 2030. And I say that very seriously. It might sound dramatic, but I'm a Black woman who has constantly criticized Trump. And this man is talking about like, he has a secretary of retribution. I don't really know how much longer I have, honestly. So like, I don't know. I don't know what I've seen a lot of Black women being like, yeah, we're done. We did what we can do. And we are going into our soft girl era because fuck this. And I think that's honestly all we can do. Like, learn how to grow your own food and make it for as long as you can. Because, yeah, I think that the time of like teaming up with white folks for Black people is a wrap. It's a wrap for that shit.
Yeah.
All that listening and learning just for us to be here. Fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That shit too. I'm just like, I have been ranting about that on online as well. That like this whole idea of like being nice to fascists, like, no. Sorry.
And I watch, they're going to obey in advance.
Yeah, we need to be understanding of these people and their issues. And I'm
you
sorry.
tried that in 2016 and look at where you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you look at the numbers, the country shifted right. And I bet that is a result of a whole bunch of people like, we need to understand, we need to listen to them, and then found themselves getting fucking red pilled.
It's being seen as like, oh, see, like, that's because all of these people are being radicalized against, quote unquote wokeism and culture war, this, that, the other. I'm like, no, it's not. I think actually it's because people who were calling people out for that shit got like shamed into not doing it. And so a bunch of people were allowed to act like fucking assholes with no consequences again. My current favorite flavor of social media content at the moment is the videos of Trump supporters being like surprised that their friends and family members have like fully cut them off now. And people being like, yeah, like one time I can maybe forgive it, but like you chose this again, knowing full well like who this person is.
Yeah.
And that like that he is going to go after like the basic rights of people. Forget it. No way.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
What I am more concerned about this time is like the first Trump administration, Trump was the scariest thing about it. You kind of felt like he had some handlers around him who would keep him from the worst possible instincts. Like people like as odious as Mike Pence is, you would think that he did when it came down to it, he did keep him from his worst authoritarian impulse.
Yeah. Like you could say he risked his life too.
Yeah. No, he literally did. Right. And so like you had people as odious as Scott Pruitt was, or even as Jeff Sessions was odious, but he stopped there. They had lines. Now Trump has people behind him whose lines are even further away than Trump's own lines. And so it feels like the thing that will be holding it together will be like the thing saving us from the crazy people is actually Trump himself. And that is terrifying because that man is terrifying on his own, and he's senile, and he's hanging on by a fucking thread. Like his blood is basically peanut oil at this point. So
yeah, that's the other thing is like I have seen a lot of people being like, well, he's really old and he seems really sick. So, the good news is he'll probably die soon.
I don't think that's good news.
JD Vance, like that guy's worse.
I'm older than JD Vance.
Yeah. And what people I think seem to have missed is like, yes, JD Vance is very weird. Yes, that's true. He's also totally connected into like the whole Peter Thiel universe, which makes him way more dangerous.
He's an actual zealot with actual convictions, whereas Donald Trump is just all about his ego.
And so I honestly think that like there will be points where they try to,
push their agenda on him, and just for the sheer sake of having an ego, he won't go along with it. So that is the little bit of hope that we have.
That's what actually I've heard from a couple people on the Project 2025 stuff is that Trump isn't the reason that Trump has distanced himself from it is not just because like it got bad press during the campaign, but also because he doesn't like it when like he doesn't like that he didn't write it and didn't have a hand.
He doesn't like being told what to do. I don't know, but going back to this idea that none of these ideas are new, even the idea of using the military on dissidents.
That is somewhat new, I would say. Yeah, that's scary. And I think that that's something that, we're already starting to see more of in the US. And I think we can expect to see more. And I think like I've been talking to a couple people who are social scientists who study, civil disobedience and social change and those kinds of things. And like what they all say is like, look, like there's a pretty solid historical record here of like, the protests are going to get more disruptive and violent, and state suppression is going to get more disruptive and violent. And those things are going to continue until one of two things or both happen, which is that like kind of quote unquote average people feel threatened enough or mad enough that like you get mass people out in the streets, or it causes so much economic instability that corporations start leaning on the government to knock it off, or both. So yeah, I think, but like to your earlier point about the climate movement, I mean, this is why for years people have been saying, you guys need to focus on voting rights, you need to like ensure democracy, all these things. And again, I'm like, yeah, like the fix is not doubling down on making climate action just about batteries and solar panels. Like you guys have been trying to do that. You've been focused on that for decades. And then in recent history, you've been trying to like narrow the focus more and more and more and more. And it doesn't work. It hasn't worked. I don't know what has changed that makes you think that it's going to work.
Look, one of these days, Baloo is actually going to answer to his name. One of these days. If I just keep calling it, but truth be told, Baloo does come when I call him sweetie. He understands what sweetie means.
That's cute.
However, Democrats get not a fucking clue. And people are like, oh, what should the Democrats do now? I don't know, girl. I think you should probably, leave the country or something.
Walk into the sea.
It might be a wrap for you. And I know we're like laughing or whatever, but I'm dead the fuck serious. Like I don't know that there's going to be an election in 2028. And I don't know that you're going to be able to run for it without, putting your life in serious danger.
Well, that's the thing. Like people kept referring to Trump saying, this is the last time we're going to have to do this at his rallies and stuff as like some indication of like that, he can't run again. But I kept hearing it as like, because we're not going to have elections anymore.
That was how I always heard it. I didn't know anybody heard it differently. That was very that man doesn't think he's going to die.
I don't know. I'm sure he's got a blood boy somewhere.
Does that work?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty. It's really scary.
Yeah,
it's
and
really
as
scary.
for what this means for climate change, like, I you can say goodbye to the Paris Agreement for one thing, but I think it's a wrap for climate action on any meaningful scale. And like, I know last time everybody was like, oh, well, he's not the president of the world. We can do state level action. We can do city level action. The best thing to focus on right now is adaptation, I feel. Because it's not going away. So like, yeah.
Yeah. I've seen an awful lot of climate scientists that I really respect being like, okay, yeah, that's a wrap on certainly on 1.5, probably on 2 degrees.
Yeah.
Because you're just not going to get. And it's funny because you've got still like the Jesse Jenkins and, Rob Myers of the world being like, the markets, like you can't stop the progress of renewable energy. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I guess like it must be nice to have such faith in the world systems, I guess.
Yeah, but if the markets, like we're already so far behind. We're already in so much danger. Like this hurricane season kicked off with a Category 5 in July.
Yeah.
We are in trouble. We are already on a different planet. So talking about in 20 years, the markets are, or even in 10 years, that lets me know that you are nowhere near the front lines of this shit.
Yeah. Well, and then like they're completely missing. I feel like it's like I know I just talked about my spreadsheet, but I feel like these guys are like too like living in their spreadsheets too much and not like, lifting their heads up and looking around occasionally. Cause it's like, what do you think is going to happen when you have extreme weather events layered on top of fascism, layered on top of like, kind of isolationist policies? It's not going to be good. It's not going to be people being like, yeah, let's rally around. I don't know. I'm just like, yeah. And also, honestly, like I hear that and I'm like, you're not a serious person. Like your approach to fixing this relies on a bunch of stuff working that's already clearly broken. So like,
exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, it's pretty depressing.
I know whenever you talk about climate change, which, we did a little bit, you're supposed to leave people with hope. Don't ask me for hope again, ever.
Yeah.
I have none for you. And I used to say, just because I don't focus on hope doesn't mean I'm hopeless. I think I am now. I am. And I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not going to pretend not to be.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think that's a pretty like valid way to feel, really. And like data-based, reality-based.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So,
all right. Well, maybe we should leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stay safe out there, people.
Mm-hmm.